Hey guys, in this video I'm going to show you how I spiced up these boring wooden posts with this faux stone pillar wrap product by GenStone. Let's take a closer look. Now the bad news is that this project was part of my Gable porch overhang project, which I can't show you just yet. But the good news is that we're taking a break from that basement bathroom project. Okay, let me show you how I installed this product. Okay, so we're installing this Arctic Smoke pillar panel by GenStone. So if we take our first panel, that's 24 inches, and then we take our second panel, which is also going to be 24 inches, we should be right at 48 inches. Perfect. So what we're going to do is we're going to mark probably 48 1/4, just so we're a little bit off the concrete at the bottom. Okay, so at this point you can see that we have our mark all the way around the post. Now we can start shimming it out. So as you can see, when we preliminarily place this stone veneer around the post, you can see that we actually need to shim out to around 8 inches or so. This is a 6 by 6 inch post, and although some of you know this, some of you are going to have some serious trust issues when I tell you that a 6 by 6 is actually 5.5 inches by 5.5 inches. So we're going to have to shim out this 5.5 inch post all the way out to 8 inches, and to do that, we're going to be using a bunch of pressure treated fence pickets that we picked up from Home Depot. So we're going to go ahead and cut these down and kind of place them all around this post. Let's see how it goes. These fence pickets are 5/8 inch, so when we stack two of them, we're right at around 1.25 inches. So if we do two fence pickets on both sides of the post, that's going to be 1.25 inches plus 5.5 inches for the post, plus another 1.25 inches on the other side, gets us to 8 inches. Okay, so we got our fence pickets lined up. We're going to cut it just a little bit shy of 48 inches, and for efficiency, we're going to go crazy and try to cut all 4 of these at once. All right, here it goes. Y'all ever forget to plug in the saw? Happens to me literally every time, it seems like.
Substantial level of stupid.
Okay, got it plugged in. Let's try that again. All right, let's see how we did. Okay, so a quick pro tip. I'm gonna position these boards on top of this anchor plate right here, and then I'm gonna cut the fence pickets on this side a little bit longer because we don't have to contend with this. So I cut these at around 45 inches to go on top, and then this one's gonna be 48 inches to make up for this extra plate. Okay, so we cut our shorter post to 45 inches. Now we're gonna cut the 48 inch posts. And pardon the mess behind me, I just did a tongue and groove project on the underside of the gable, so we'll clean up soon. Okay, so as mentioned, we have our longer picket right here, and then our shorter picket is gonna rest on top, as you can see. And then when we go to the top here, you can see that they're moderately at the same height. Not perfect, but you get the idea. Now that we cut our first pickets to size, let's go ahead and attach them to the post. To attach these, we are using 1.5 inch deck screws. These are exterior rated, obviously, because this is pressure treated wood. Let's go ahead and mount it. And I'm not going super crazy with the amount of screws I'm using, since we're gonna be using the screws for the next steps as well. Okay, so we have shimmed the first fence picket on, and we did that all the way around the post, as you can see. So now I'm going to move on to the other post and attach the fence pickets just like we did for the first post. And after taking a closer look, I decided to use 1/2 inch plywood instead of another 5/8 inch fence picket because I actually want to shim out to 7 3/4 inches, not 8. I think that's going to give us a better fit. And after cutting a 7 3/4 inch strip, I cut it in half to around 48 inches, and it started to delaminate here, which I wasn't super thrilled about, but we'll work with it. Then I went and I ripped down the remaining strips for the rest of the column. Okay, so the idea here is we have our 1/2 inch plywood. We'll put that on both sides, and then we'll sandwich the other boards on the other side like this, and that'll give us, hopefully, what we need. And after attaching the 1/2 inch plywood to the fence picket, this is what we were left with. Okay, so here's what I did. I had to ad-lib a little bit, but as you can see, when we put a tape on it, we're just under 8 inches, about 7 3/4, which I found to be a better bet than going with the fence picket. So that's why I did one fence picket and then one piece of 1532 plywood. Okay, so we're gonna have to put these pillar caps on, and obviously, if you guys know of a way to get this on without cutting it in half, let me know. So we're gonna go ahead and cut this in half so we can actually get this on top of this post. Now, if I would have planned a little bit better, I could have maybe just cut out a center piece and slipped it on, but we didn't. So we're cutting it in half. Okay, so here's a look at our peaked pillar cap. And as I mentioned before, we're gonna have to cut this in half in order to get it around our post. So the way I'm gonna cut this out is I just have a chalk line here. I'm gonna put it on one end, and it's gonna be pretty easy for me to visually go across to the other side. When I have it where I like somewhere like right there, I'll go ahead and snap it. Now we could try to cut this using a miter saw or a table saw, but if you can see, the blade on this is actually pretty thick. So instead of doing that, I think I'm gonna cut this with a handsaw. Now I'm fortunate because I have a little bit of leftover 6x6, so I'm gonna cut out a little bit of a wafer here, and that way I can use it as a reference guide for where I'm gonna cut the penetration for the actual post in the pillar cap. So let's cut off a little wafer real quick. Okay, so here is our wafer. We're gonna use this to actually mark where we're gonna cut out the penetration for the post. So I'm gonna start, I think, by just trying to get it in the middle. So we'll go ahead and get this started. And then I'll angle it. Let's maybe start on this side. I think it might be easier to do it towards me. Okay, so we got that side established. Let's flip it around and do the same thing on this side. Okay, so there's our line right there, and now we just need to cut it out. Now, before I actually cut all the way through this, I think I want to try to mark the actual cutout for this 6x6. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the dead center of this 6x6 wafer that we cut. So I'll go ahead and mark that by connecting the end to end. This is basically two diagonals, and where they meet is going to be the center. So I'll go ahead and mark that. So right here is going to be our center. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to position that on top of this pillar right here, and I'm basically visually going to line it up. So I want to get this in line with my cut line. I'll do the same thing on that side, and then what I'll do is I'll visually just kind of confirm that we're the same distance on each side. So it looks like we're going to be about 4 inches from the edge on each side. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I'm happy with this, kind of get it where I want. And we're going to see if we can't mark this. So that's kind of our cutout there, and then we'll confirm. We look like we're about 4 inches right there. Looks like we're about 4 inches right there. Just about 4 inches right there. And again, 4 inches right there. So visually, that looks like it's right in the middle. We have that right there. I'm pretty happy with it. We can go ahead and continue with our cut now. There's our cut. Boom. So I know we're running out of daylight here, but I really want to cut out the rest of this penetration tonight and just get it over with. So I'm going to cut on the inside of this line just in the event that I need to come back and take some more later, but I'd rather undercut it than overcut it because we can always cut more. We can't add any back. So let's go ahead and try to cut this out. So there are a bunch of different methods you can use to actually cut out this penetration. I started with a hacksaw, but I didn't have quite the depth I needed to actually complete it. So once I got as deep as I could with the hacksaw, I switched over to a coping saw to complete the cutout. I don't know if this was the best way to do it, but it worked for me. And after repeating that process for the other piece of the pillar, here's how we look. And since it was getting dark, I moved inside to cut out the other penetration for the second pillar cap, and hopefully you can see everything a little bit more clear with some additional lighting. And now what we're gonna do is, you can see we have a little bit of a ways to go to get to that line, and I'm gonna use a file. That way I make sure that I'm not gonna overdo it. So we'll use this file to get us even with that line. Okay, now that we're finally done fooling around with those pillar caps, we can finally start to install the veneer product. Okay, so we finally got to the fun part of the project and we can actually start installing this faux stone veneer product. So basically, we have the two panels here. If you flip one over, they're the same, but if you flip it over again, they are going to interlock like this. And then if you turn them at a 90-degree angle like so, they're going to wrap around the post. So we're going to use a little bit of exterior rated construction adhesive in addition to our exterior rated deck screws to secure these to the posts. And one last thing to note is there's this one structural member through the middle here where we're going to try to make sure our screws go through it as opposed to this void space. So with that said, let's get to installing. So to install these pillar panels, I started by putting a bead of construction adhesive down the center, and then I made sure I was perfectly level with the line that we established previously on the post. Okay, so as you can see, I'm pretty dang close to level, and I'm putting the fasteners through kind of the creases. I'm not going through the face here. I want to try to hide it in between the grooves in the stone. So that's why I'm putting the screws right there. Hopefully you can see that. So after getting the first piece in, I put some adhesive on the second piece, interlocked it with the first piece as shown, and again, checked for level and secured it to the post. I only put in a couple fasteners at first because I wanted the ability to make minor adjustments as needed. Okay, so we got the first row in. Now we're gonna go ahead and move on to the bottom row. Okay, because this one here is a longer piece, you can see it's longer, we're gonna use the shorter side here as opposed to the longer. So we'll flip it over and we'll mix and match properly like that, and that should do us pretty good. But first we'll take this guy off, we'll put in our adhesive just like we've been doing. Now we'll go ahead and position it in place. We'll lift it up because we have a little bit of a gap at the bottom. And once I was happy with how it was looking, I secured it in place. Then I repeated this process for the next piece, flipping it over so that it interlocked with the piece I installed previously, and then we're just gonna secure it to the post with construction adhesive going through the joints in the faux stone. After securing the pillar panels to the post, you can use a clamp to pull in the adjacent sections together to eliminate the gaps. Okay, so at this point, we've finished wrapping the first post. Now let's move on over here and take care of this guy. Now you can see here that there might be some gaps. What we're gonna do is we're gonna put a screw in from one side and hopefully that's gonna pull it in tight right here. A bar clamp like this is gonna be your best friend for helping to eliminate these gaps. If you don't have bar clamps, you definitely need to grab some, and I'll link these down in the description. So here we go, we're gonna go ahead and drill through and hopefully pull this together. Now hopefully when we take this clamp off, the gap does not open back up. Let's see. You can see that gap is much better. Okay, so we got the top row in. Let's move on and do the bottom. All right, I'm gonna go crazy here and try to get a 2-for-1. Let's see how it goes. Probably not gonna go well, but hey, you gotta try sometimes. All right, let's see how we do. So during shipping, it looks like a couple of these broke in half. So not a problem, we'll just put them together and then screw each of these pieces individually, but I don't think it's gonna be much of an issue. And after securing those partial pieces with construction adhesive and screws, let's mix our color match caulk. Okay, so at this point in the project, we need to channel our inner Picasso because we're gonna be doing a color match caulk, and to do that, we're gonna have to mix up these paints to a color that most closely resembles this pillar cap, because when we end up putting these together, we're gonna use caulk to kind of glue it, and we want it to match, obviously. So let's go ahead and mix up these paints to the best color match we can get, which is gonna be pretty close to this color right here. Try a little bit of this guy right here, why not? All right, let's go ahead and mix this up. Honestly, that's pretty close. I'm gonna go a little bit lighter with it, not quite where I want it. So we'll add a little bit more of the white color. Pretty good with that, I think that looks pretty good. Okay. With this mixed up, we're gonna need 30 milliliters, and we're gonna pull that up in our syringe right here. So we have a 30 milliliter syringe. We'll go ahead and pull that up in. Okay, that's just about 30 mils, not too bad. So now that we got that, we'll put that aside, and we're gonna have to cut off this top right here, so let me do that real quick. Dang, that thing is on there pretty good. We got that cut. Now we're gonna take our syringe, and we're gonna plop it in here. And we are going to mix this in. So let's see how this works. Just so you can see real quick, we're gonna go ahead and inject all of that paint in. Okay. And once we have all the paint in there, we're gonna put the cap on and we are going to shake it. We're supposed to shake for 60 seconds. Okay, 60 seconds is up. We're gonna go ahead and open this up now. And now we're going to add in the activator. Okay, and now we'll add all of the activator. Okay, all the activators in there. We'll put our cap back on. Now we gotta shake again for 1 to 3 minutes. Okay, so now that we've shook everything up for around 2 minutes, we're gonna let it sit for 30 minutes and then we'll apply it. Okay, so it has been 30 minutes. We're gonna go ahead and take this off. We are going to put on our cap. Then we'll go ahead and cut off an opening. And we're ready to go ahead and apply this. Okay, so we have our two pieces. You can see here, it comes around nicely, and then we'll be able to get those to meet just like that with this couple screws. Now let's go ahead and apply construction adhesive and get them installed. So as you can see here, I'm applying a pretty copious amount of this exterior radiate construction adhesive, and then I'm pushing the two sides of that pillar panel into place just to test the fit. Now we'll switch this out for our color match caulk. We're gonna put that all up in here. Put a little bit on this side too, but it's just gonna kind of go everywhere. I already know that for sure. Okay, let's put these together. And after pushing the two pieces of the pillar panel together and getting them as flush as possible, I then secured the pillar panel to the 6x6 post, one screw on each side. Then I applied color match caulk to the gap between the two pillar panels, hoping to camouflage it as best as possible. And although it looks like the caulk is a little bit lighter than the pillar panel, I'm hoping it dries a little bit darker. Then I took a wet paper towel and I cleaned up any of the excess caulk on the post. Then I took a screw and I went in horizontally to secure each half of the pillar panel together to seal up that gap even more. Finally, I took some color match caulk and I sealed between the pillar cap and the post, which will hopefully make it completely watertight. Then I went back with the color match caulk and filled in the screw holes to hopefully camouflage those completely. Then I repeated the same process on the other post. Okay, so I had to fight with the caulk a little bit, but overall it doesn't look too bad. What I'm gonna do is put a little bit more of the color match caulk on the screw holes to kind of camouflage them a little better, but corners look okay. We did a good job matching the color, but a couple gaps here, but overall not too bad. And finally, I'm gonna show you up close and personal how I'm applying a little bit of color match caulk to seal up those screw holes. And once that dries, it should dry a little bit closer to the actual color. And one last thing, if you have a couple screw holes that you're not super proud of, you can use the color match caulk to seal those up. All right, let's take a quick reminder look of where this project started and let me know down in the comments what you think of the final result. All right guys, that's a wrap on this video. If you enjoyed it, please drop a like down below and subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so that you're notified when I release my Gable porch overhang project. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one.